Egypt's election authority says 105 overseas stations open on day 2, with more opening today. A Hamas negotiator says the October 7th attack was a response to Israeli aggression. And UN rights chief warns civilians in El Fasher are trapped amid ongoing abuses. Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Q News. I'm Mark Summers. We begin in Egypt. The Grand Egyptian Museum hit full operating capacity for a second day, with online-only booking now applied on Fridays, Saturdays and public holidays to manage heavy demand. Museum management says yesterday's on-site ticket sales were halted after visits exceeded the daily operating limit. Under the new policy, entry on Fridays, Saturdays and public holidays is reservation via the official website only. Ticket windows will be closed on those days. Pre-confirmed bookings remain valid and are being honoured at scheduled times. On other weekdays, tickets are available both online and at windows, subject to capacity. The measure aims to streamline entry, enhance safety and improve the visitor experience. Grand Egyptian Museum CEO Ahmed Hurim said a joint marketing push with operators and the Tourism Promotion Authority will sustain momentum as the museum scales up. Speaking at the Egypt Media Forum, Hurim said new galleries are under study but require significant funding and strict climate controls to protect artifacts. He outlined plans to host scientific and international conferences and to permit film shoots, differentiating documentary and commercial work for revenue and safeguards. He credited multiple ministries and partners for the museum's launch and thanked Egypt's leadership for exerting strenuous efforts for the sake of such imminent cultural landmark. Egypt's election authority says 105 overseas polling stations have opened so far, with more to follow today, as New Zealand became the first to close on day 2 of Phase 1. NEA Operations Chief Ahmed Bandari said 105 sites are currently open and remaining stations will come online through the day. He announced the first committee to finish voting was in New Zealand. Bandari held a video conference with ambassadors and diplomatic staff heading subcommittees abroad to brief the public on progress during the second day of overseas balloting in Phase 1 of the House elections, noting procedures are proceeding to schedule. Egypt's election authority says day 1 of overseas voting saw heavy participation, with coordination and new apps easing access. 52 polling sites are open so far today, with more to follow. NEA Executive Director Ahmed Bandari said turnout was strong on day 1, especially in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, crediting full coordination with the Foreign Ministry and tech support from the Communications Ministry. NEA apps helped voters find subcommittees and check crowd levels, reducing congestion. Vote counting is conducted by heads of missions, with results entered electronically into the NEA system before dispatch by diplomatic pouch to Cairo. Bandari said openings are rolling, 52 sites active so far today, with 87 due to open. Egypt's missions across the Asia-Pacific report orderly voting in day 2 of overseas balloting, with several posts counting down hours to close and preparing to start the tally. Ambassadors and consuls in Australia, Japan, India, China, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Bangladesh and other posts say procedures have run smoothly since yesterday, with steady participation from Egyptian communities. Many stations reported 4 to 7 hours remaining before doors close and counting begins. Officials thanked the National Election Authority and technical support teams for rapid coordination. NEA Operations Chief Ahmed Bandari held a video call with Overseas Subcommittee heads to brief the public on progress during day 2 of Phase 1. And now to Gaza, where attention centres on sustaining the truce, protecting civilians and advancing a durable settlement.
And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just want to thank you very much. It was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful, and very, very helpful. Everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way. But he's a great president, and I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Thank you very much.
Hamas negotiator Khalil al-Hayya said the October 7th attacks were a response to aggression and the marginalization of the Palestinian cause. Speaking by video to the Arab National Conference in Beirut, al-Hayya framed the October 7th attacks as retaliation and a bid to reassert the Palestinian cause. The truce in place since October 10th has repeatedly come under strain as Israel accuses Hamas of stalling on returning the bodies of detainees and failing to disarm, while carrying out strikes it says respond to attacks on its forces. The sides trade blame for violations as mediators push to hold the ceasefire. In the northern West Bank, Israeli forces dispersed marches in Kafar Kadum and in Beit Lid, protesting settler land seizures amid a surge in settler attacks reported by the UN. Residents say troops moved in to break up demonstrations against settlers taking part in the protest and for settlers taking parts of Palestinian land. The UN reports attacks by the more than 500,000 Israeli settlers have sharply risen since the Gaza war began, declaring October 2025 the worst month for such violence since records started in 2006. Israeli forces said they were acting to maintain order as rights groups urge protection for Palestinians and accountability for offenders. Local sources say Israeli warplanes struck Gaza City and Khan Yunis early today with artillery fire east of the city in what they call another breach of the ceasefire. Strikes were reported in eastern Khan Yunis and eastern Gaza City, alongside Israeli artillery shelling to the east of the southern city. No casualties were immediately reported, while at the same time, residents said Israeli occupation forces continued demolishing residential buildings and structures east of Gaza City. The United Nations says Israeli occupation forces carried out 264 attacks in the West Bank in October, the highest monthly figure in almost 20 years. UN Deputy Spokesperson Farhan Haq, citing OCHA data, reports 264 October incidents causing Palestinian deaths, injuries or property damage. the worst monthly toll since records began nearly 2 decades ago. Since 2006, attacks total 6,900, with around 15%. That's about 1,500 this year alone. The violence has displaced 3,200 Palestinians, destroyed livelihoods, and typically targets trees, vehicles, homes, and infrastructure. OCA also logged 42 children killed in the West Bank this year. That's about 1 in 5 Palestinian fatalities. Israel says a deceased detainee's body was transferred to the National Forensics Institute for identification under the ongoing ceasefire arrangements. Under the October truce, Hamas turned over all 20 living hostages in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinian detainees held by Israel. The deal also covers the return of remains, 28 detainees for 360 Palestinians. So far, Israel has received 22 hostage bodies, while 285 Palestinian bodies have been returned. That's according to Gaza health authorities, with some identifications still pending. The latest transfer on November 7th will undergo forensic examination before officials release confirmed details. Meanwhile, medical sources in Gaza say Israel handed over 15 bodies via the ICRC and received at Nasser Medical Complex, bringing the total returned to 300. Hospitals report the latest transfer is the 11th batch of bodies returned through the International Committee of the Red Cross. With today's arrival at Nasser Medical Complex in Qnews, officials say 300 bodies have now been received, of which 89 have been identified. Medical staff and families say many remains show severe abuse and burning, complicating identification. Verification efforts are ongoing, and authorities are appealing for DNA matches to confirm names. Now we are joined from Cairo by the international relations expert, Dr. Ahmed El-Eneni. Thank you very much for being here with us on Q News. What diplomatic steps today could stabilize the ceasefire in Gaza, do you think? And which countries have real leverage to make it stick?
I welcome you and your viewers, of course. The pressure, the Egyptians, authorities, and all active actors are working on stabilizing the ceasefire. Of course, there is violations. Israel wants to avoid and some terms of the agreement, and this is Cairo knows. This is Cairo now uses all diplomatic political solutions to solve this problem in order to reach the final ceasefire and to start the phase of administrating Gaza Strip and reconstructing Gaza in regards to the program of early recovery that needs all efforts for reconstruction. Gaza's reconstruction actually is a stability for process for the region to have an early recovery, and administration agreed on by all parties to stop Israel to re-bomb Gaza again. This is in order to comply to the terms of the agreement. This is why Cairo and Egypt contact all parties, including the US, Qatar, and others, to be able to comply to the terms of the agreement in order to stop and hinder or impede Israel from avoiding applying the terms. This is why always Hezbollah is the hanger, always Israel uses, and also Egypt puts its weight on this matter in order to avoid any opening any fronts, and this is what Cairo does.
Yes, of course, you mentioned Egypt there, and Egypt is, of course, very important to this procedure. Do you think, though, that it's about time that we got some kind of verification mechanism that might be seen as credible to be able to judge these violations and in order to, of course, protect civilians? Who might lead such a verification mechanism, and how might the findings be enforced?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
No problem. Yes, no problem at all. Now we're talking about the verification mechanism. Is it about time there is some way to judge these violations, whether it be by Israel or indeed perhaps by Hamas as well, in order to protect civilians on the ground? Who might lead such a process, and how might we enforce the findings?
Of course, the U.S. Supervises this matter, and the active actors, and also Egypt. If there is any violation, the problem would be great. That will push every party not to comply to the terms and push both parties to fight again. And this is what Cairo is concerned about. This is why Cairo contacts all parties, especially the Palestinian, for complete commitment. Cairo sees there is an evasion of from the Israel party to the terms of agreement, and I think the U.S. has the word here, and I think the situation is still calm from although in my point of view it is Israel that is trying to avoid complying to the terms and getting back to bombing some parts in Gaza. And I think the commission from the Qatari side and Egyptian side, the mediators and actors are trying to contact constantly the U.S., and also the U.S. does its role in pressuring Israel to comply to the terms, and in order to move to the third and third phase in regards to reconstruction of Gaza, and to have an authority symbolizing all parties in Palestine, a legitimate authority.
And how do you think Gaza's governance should be arranged, especially in the near term when it comes to trying to keep services running ahead of maybe a longer term political solution?
One of the terms of the agreement tackles a group of technocrats. They are not politicized, but it's a technical group able to supervise and administrate Gaza. Also, this group is satisfied completely from the Palestinian side, and it's important to have regional Arab consensus and the U.S. consensus on this group in order to give the guarantee, in order not to give Israel a pretext to start the fight again. This is an administration works on reconstruction one more time, supervises the reconstruction, rebuilding the infrastructure, the infrastructure, rebuilding the health system, educational system, the local system, everything, all of these matters are important in reconstruction in regards from infrastructure and institutional rebuilding. So there has to be some people consented and agreed on by the US and Palestinians as well. And I think there are important names uh, that can be included to supervise in temporary the Gaza Strip, and the Palestinian Authority is valid, legitimate by the UN, that can that can control the Gaza Strip one more time. But after the election, or after choosing this group, including many authorities and parties, in order not to have any hangers or weakness point or loops that can Israel uses again to bomb Gaza one more time.
Well, indeed. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. That was the international relations expert, Dr. Ahmed El-Aneni, joining us from Cairo. Thank you very much for being on the Bulletin. Now, health authorities in Gaza say the death toll has risen to 69,169 since October 2023, with 170,685 injured and many victims still under the rubble. Hospitals in Gaza received 10 bodies over the past 72 hours, 9 recovered from the rubble and 6 wounded. Officials say the tally remains incomplete as rescue access is limited. Since the ceasefire took effect on October 11th, 241 people have been killed and 614 injured, with 522 bodies recovered. The majority of the dead are reported to be women and children, as emergency teams continue retrieval and identification amid widespread destruction. In the West Bank, Israeli colonists uprooted dozens of olive trees and stole harvests from Palestinian farmland near Ramallah and Nablus as settler attacks surged last month. Local sources say colonists raided fields in Der Jaria, east of Ramallah, uprooting about 20 ancient olive trees, and stole olives from farmland in Aqraba, south of Nablus, areas where Palestinians face access restrictions. The Wall and Settlement Resistance Commission recorded 766 settler attacks last month. Rights groups warn the spike is intensifying pressure on rural communities during the harvest, with farmers reporting repeated vandalism, theft and intimidation. Mountains of garbage across Gaza are fueling a public health threat, with municipal access blocked and collection gear destroyed despite a truce last month. In Gaza City alone, around 250,000 tons of rubbish have piled up near homes and along major roads after workers were barred from the main eastern landfill and fleets were shattered in the fighting. Residents report stench, flies and sewage, with spikes in diarrhea and skin disease as pests and rodents spread. The municipality says roughly 85% of waste removal vehicles and equipment are out of service. During early recovery, crews will clear smaller inner-city dumps where possible, but major sites are expected to persist until full access to the main landfill is restored. Also in Qnews, a glimpse of hope shines as Al-Aqsa University held its first graduation since the war began, as Gaza students celebrated under a ceasefire with dance, cheers and emotional tributes. Amid a lull in the fighting, graduates in Al-Aqsa University marked a rare moment of relief in Qnews. Dansim Dabka waving flags and delivering heartfelt speeches. The cohort is the first to complete studies since the conflict erupted more than 2 years ago. Students described the ceremony as proof of resilience and commitment to rebuilding their futures. Faculty hailed the milestone despite damaged facilities and scarce resources. In eastern Chad, Sudanese refugees from El Fasher recount brutal abuses as UNHCR's Deputy Chief, Kelly Clements, urges continued international support for host communities and life-saving aid. At the Ora Kasoni camp near the Sudan border, refugees described beatings, sexual violence and killings during their flight from El Fasher. One survivor, Aisha Ismail Wazir, said many were assaulted and others did not make it. Visiting the site, the UNHCR Deputy High Commissioner, Kelly Clements, called for sustained funding and protection measures, warning needs are outpacing resources as arrivals continue and pressure mounts on local services. UN Rights Chief Volker Turk warned of ongoing atrocities in El Fasher, saying traumatized civilians are trapped as summary executions, rape and ethnic attacks persist.
Now, traumatized civilians are still trapped inside the Sudanese city of El Fasher in Darfur, and they are being prevented from leaving. I fear that the abominable atrocities such as summary executions, rape and ethnically motivated violence are continuing within the city. And for those who manage to flee, the violence doesn't end because the exit routes themselves have been the scenes of unimaginable cruelty. At the same time, I issue a stark warning about events unfolding in Kordofan. Since the capture of El Fasher, the civilian casualties, the destruction and mass displacement there have been mounting. There is no sign of de-escalation. To the contrary, developments on the ground indicate clear preparations for intensified hostilities with everything that implies for its long-suffering people.
Volker Turk there. Now, Sudanese reactions were mixed after the RSF agreed to a US Arab-backed humanitarian ceasefire and talks with hopes for return and safety set against doubts over the RSF's record of honouring truces. In Tuila and Omdurman, displaced families and residents voiced guarded optimism and skepticism as the RSF accepted a mediator proposal for a humanitarian pause and talks on ending hostilities. The army had yet to issue a formal response. The move follows the RSF's capture of famine-hit El Fasher, tightening its hold over Darfur. Mediators backed by US President Donald Trump and Arab partners are pressing for verifiable corridors, civilian protections and a monitored timeline amid repeated ceasefire failures over the past 2.5 years. And that's almost all we have time for, but just before we go, time to recap the main headlines this afternoon. Egypt's election authority says 105 overseas stations opened on day 2, with more opening today. A Hamas negotiator says the October 7th attack was a response to Israeli aggression. And as we've just been hearing there, UN Rights Chief warns civilians in El Fasher are trapped amid ongoing abuses. Now, for more stories and live updates, you can follow Q News on our social media platforms 24 hours a day. From all of us here, thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.